Hi there. This is Lynn Jordan of Regarding Romance, and today I have a very special guest, Mary Buckham, who is a USA Today best-selling author, and she writes the Amazon best-selling Writing Active Settings series, which is fantastic. Mary is such a great writing instructor, but she also has a fantastic urban fantasy series that she says has attitude. It has love, romance, danger, and kick-ass heroines. That's the Invisible Recruit series, and today I'm going to be talking with Mary about her new release, Invisible Allies, as well as urban fantasy in general and knowing us just about any other topic. If you have any questions, if you're watching on the Google Plus event page, if you look down below, there's a comment section. Feel free to leave your comments in there. I'll be checking them out. And if you've got questions for Mary, just let us know. And if this is a new platform for you, it's one I've come to really like, and I think Mary's not quite as fond of it because she's had some technical difficulties. But
I've broken everything.
well, it's a challenge. You can sit back and watch us. Be assured we are live, and that's why some of these challenges are happening. So leave your comments. You can take part, and we're so glad you can join us today. How are you, Mary, other than the microphone difficulties?
Well, given that the first technical difficulty that we had to deal with was getting me out of a little box, and that was surmounted, I'm feeling great. Yes, I'm out of the box now.
Yeah, you can't keep you in a box for long. I know. I've done plotting with you. I know how that goes. Well, I'm so excited about your new addition to your Invisible Recruit series, Invisible Allies, and that is sort of a totally different approach for you, isn't it?
It is a different approach in that the series started in one particular character's point of view, Alex Noziak, and she's half witch, half shaman, and a very go-get-'em type of character. And so it was really easy the minute I put her name on the page, it was more a case of I, as the author, had to run and catch up with her. It's kind of like raising children. But the other character, another member of the Invisible Recruit team, is Kelly McAllister. And she's more the good girl, the one who follows the rules, who likes her life defined. She was a former kindergarten teacher, and she's just a nice person. And she's not like me at all. And
No.
To work a lot harder to get into her story, find out where she was coming from and where she's going with her story. And I had a full-length novel on her, Invisible Secrets, that released just a month or so ago. And Invisible Allies paired Alex from the first 5 stories in the series with Kelly, who's the most recent story, and now this novella. So it was a different approach to looking at the characters and telling their stories.
Oh, well, I know when I picked it up, of course, I grabbed it because it was you, and I didn't bother to read the blurb about what was going on, and I thought, something's weird. Something's off. It wasn't the world that I was expecting. And then I realized that it was Kelly's point of view, which, was surprised me a little bit. Did you find that hard to switch voices like that?
Absolutely. In fact, there were many, many times that it was like I had to keep telling Alex to get in her box. Stay in the box there. Go down in the corner of the screen, Alex, because this is Kelly's story. And this is Kelly telling the story. And Alex kind of kept wanting to take charge. I know that's hard to believe, but you did want to keep taking charge. I had to promise her that she gets her own stories, more of her own stories, her point of view, her issues that she's grappling with. And only then would she let Kelly deal with Kelly issues. And part of those issues in this novella is dealing with Alex, who was protective of Kelly and watched out for her and thought of her as, in many ways, a younger sister, someone who had to be taken care of. Since Alex grew up with four older brothers, she was always the one that they saw in that position. So she was used to being the one in charge and the one who got them into trouble but got them out of trouble. And in this particular story, she's the one that does get them into trouble, but it's Kelly and her strengths that has to get them out of trouble.
Well, you did an excellent job in making the shift. Are you going to do that a lot with this series?
In the series, in the original team, there are 5 team members, 5 women with extra abilities who have been recruited to fight paranormal and preternatural threats to a world where most humans don't know that that threat even exists. So each of the characters will have their own story from their point of view. The way I started it was there were 3 novels with Alex and 2 novellas with Alex. Now with Kelly, there will be 3 novels with her and at least 2 novellas with her before I start exploring one of the other team members who will not keep quiet that long to see the world from her point of view, but it will be the world that these other characters are still in. So it is a great, from a writing craft perspective, it's a wonderful thing to do as a writer, to basically take the same scene and see it from totally different, what you notice, what you feel. It should be different. And if it's not, then it's you, the author, seeing what's going on, not the character.
Right, and we don't want that. We do want to hear these characters are so fantastic that we really want to find out more about them.
Thank you. They don't have any choice but to find out more about them. So then I can sleep at night and go on to other series.
Good, good. That's we want more series. We want more series. But I have to ask because I think you teased it a little bit. What about Bran? Are we going to see more about him?
Bran is the love interest for Alex in the first several stories. And yes, there will definitely be more Bran. Because with strong women, you don't get wimpy men.
No, definitely not.
They're usually run over, stompled on, and kicked to the curb. But yes, there will be Bran. In fact, I'm planning something very different with Bran that's going to really rock Alex's world and make her have to make some really hard choices about what's going to be coming up and how she's going to deal with him. He is, at this time, his being a warlock is hidden from the human world. He's known as a haute couture clothing designer, and that's how the world sees him. And he's okay with that. It's a very powerful position, a very public and visible one. But a new role that I'm going to force him into, because I'm mean, is going to challenge him, but challenge their relationship, the relationship that just really started to be cemented at the end of the 3rd novel that they have together.
Well, he is such an interesting character, partly because of the fashion angle, because you don't really think of, a macho hero type being a fashion designer. Knowing you, I just know that there are hidden depths there that you've yet to plumb. What else do you have going on
in the series or in the world or in life?
Well, yeah, in your marvelously creative brain.
I've had a lot of different series that I've been exploring, and one involves it's called the Shaman of Seattle series, and it is a young woman who is Tlingit or part Tlingit who has been basically ostracized from her culture. She was sent to Seattle and raised from a young girl as a Native urban American.
Mm-hmm.
as in urban Indian American. And she has just recently started apprenticing under the great Shaman of Seattle, but she doesn't even realize what that means until his death, when that position falls to her. And the ramifications of that and the absorption of that is just quite traumatic, because it opens to her eyes what actually is happening in a realm that she never realized. So there's that series. I have a cozy, well, amateur sleuth mystery series set in Pike Place Market in Seattle
Hmm.
with a tarot card reader.
Oh, that's interesting.
And then I have a amateur sleuth mystery series set on the Makah Indian Reservation here in Washington State. And the Makah tribe are the whale killers, those who are known
Oh,
historically and also recently who will hunt whales. And so it's kind of like a Tony Hillerman meets the Pacific Northwest coast.
ah,
And
that's that sounds fascinating.
that's on next week's agenda, not this week's.
I did want to make a comment about the people who are on the Google Plus page. If you're not seeing the video, of course, if you're not seeing the video, you won't hear this, but you may have to refresh it. Let me go over there and I'll put in a comment. Well, what about your the series that you write with Diana?
The young
Uh,
adult series?
right. You've sort of finished up one of the story arcs with that, right?
Yes, called the Red Moon series. And that kind of was an amalgamation of a young adult story that includes science fiction, it includes fantasy, it includes strong romantic elements, it's action adventure, it has the pace of a suspense or thriller story. So it was really, really fun to write. And we planned it as a 3-book arc. The series is now complete. All 3 books are available. Time Trap, Time Return, and Time Lock. They've been well received. And um, we, we know that the books right now are finished, but we don't know that there might not be some spin-off novellas on the characters. We've had so much positive requests for that. The challenge is that between the 2 of us, each of us is writing currently about 5 to 7 books a year and seeing them to publication. So we have to plan well in advance to include more projects into
Hmm.
timeline.
Well, I know for myself as well as I'm sure the other readers, we're glad that you're writing that many books a year. We're breathlessly waiting to see what happens in the series you've got going and the series that you've talked about. That sounds real exciting. Um, I wanted to talk a little bit about your urban fantasy series, and I don't know whether the most of the viewers have seen that develop and know how it started and why we are so fortunate to be able to have those books now. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
If you mean to go back,
Yeah,
the
way back.
the original series started as at the time, Harlequin had a series called Bombshell, and it was to be kick-ass heroines. I read the instructions, and I thought it said smart-ass heroines. And I thought, I can write those, not a problem. So I wrote a draft for one. In the meantime, I had been published in romantic suspense. And like a lot of traditional publishers, once you're published in a particular type of story, they want to see more of that same kind of story. So it took me writing, by that time, I had, I think I submitted about 3 or 4 stories. I was past that kind of story, romantic suspense. I wanted to look at these where the female protagonist was the strong. It wasn't about whether she found a love interest or not. That could be icing on the cake or just to add complications to her life. I wanted to find out more how she overcame limiting beliefs, how she faced a world that wasn't necessarily supportive of her strengths and saw them as negatives, not positives, and she herself would see them as negatives. So I had to submit 3 or 4 more novels to Harlequin before they would even look at a Bombshell submission from me. And my editor at that time, she simply hadn't read any Bombshells, even though she should have. She was supposed to acquire for all the lines.
Ah.
So when I finally said, "Have you even read one?" and she said, "No," and I said, "Okay, this weekend, read this particular book, then read my book, and tell me if it doesn't fit that category." And she came back and she offered for it that Monday.
Ah.
So that was the first book in the series. That was
Mhm.
Vaughn Monroe's debutante, sort of a Paris Hilton
Yeah.
alias story. The second story in that series, Alex, and the third story, Kelly's, had been purchased by Harlequin, and they were ready for production. One of them was going to be coming out the next month, and one was going to be coming out in 2 months. So I had geared up a lot of promotion, that type of stuff, to support those works when Harlequin decided not to sell Bombshells anymore. And so basically I had a few weeks notice that all the effort I was putting into build awareness of this series was not going to happen. But you don't just stop. And these characters did not stop. So when I looked into independent publishing, I thought at last those characters have a voice. They have a way to be brought out to the public. And if the public doesn't want them, then I'll find out. They won't be purchased. But that's not the case at
Mhm.
all.
Oh, absolutely. Do you think that maybe Bombshell was just sort of ahead of its time? Because the urban fantasy wasn't even on the radar back then.
Exactly. It was way ahead of its time. And at that time, they were just starting to explore TV shows like Angel or Witchblade or Buffy, even.
Hmm.
They didn't know what to do with it. And the Bombshells were not meant to end with a romance per book. It was not, they were, characters were not going to necessarily get that happy ever after promise. So what you had were Harlequin readers who expected that kind of ending. And all of a sudden they were getting this product, this book that may have been a good book, it may have been a great book, but it didn't wasn't the book they expected to buy because it had the Harlequin brand on it. That was one of the issues. And another issue that the booksellers were constantly saying is that the books, they didn't know where to shelve them. It wasn't a traditional category romance. It belonged in the regular bookshelves, in the right in with the romances or just general fiction or the fantasy stories. So it was a matter of real estate in the bookstores that caused them problems. So by the time that readers got used to what the Bombshell line was about, it was pulled. I don't think it even lasted a year. Um, so it was a very interesting process to go through with the publisher. And I applaud them for taking the risk and also for realizing what their core business was. And that wasn't kick-ass urban fantasy stories.
No, it wasn't at all. Well, I know we talked about this a little bit before. Now the urban fantasy stories seem to be so popular. You have any thoughts on why that is?
Well, I think it is because for women's fiction, and women's fiction is a broad title, it's basically anything where the woman is the protagonist can be women's fiction. And then you break it down into smaller areas of women's fiction. You have those things like a Jodi Picoult or Susan Wiggs or Megan Chance, that it's about the female character, but it's about in her world and what's happening to it. And oftentimes there is a happy ever after, if not with the primary protagonist, with a strong secondary character. And then you have traditional romances where the guarantee is a happy ever after of some sorts. And but urban fantasy is not about that. It's about a woman coming into her own strengths. It's not necessarily about physical fighting, though there can be a lot of that in a lot of stories. It is about her accepting her gifts in whatever way they are and trying to do good for a larger group, oftentimes putting herself at risk to do so, um, in a way that you can cheer for her. It's action adventure, it's suspense, it's fast pacing, it's oh my God moments, but it's all from a woman's point of view. So you're not just having the male fantasy where the man is the only one who can do the action and he knows what is always right and he will do it, and at the end he is justified. It's a woman's fantasy which has nuances to it that you don't find in any other kind of women's fiction.
Definitely, absolutely, and it has gained such popularity. I know the readers were just hungry for that sort of a story. Um, is that one of your favorites to write? If you could write because you've written so much and in so many different areas. If you could do whatever it was you wanted, what would that be?
Well, ask the hard questions right away. To me, I don't think that way because that, in many ways, is a limiting thought that I can only do one thing. And one of the things that traditional publishing tended to do with writers was slot them into you can only write this one thing, as opposed to this month it may be I'm juiced because I'm reading a lot of amateur sleuth mysteries or cozy mysteries, or it would be easier to say what I would prefer not to write than it is to say, if I only had one choice, this is the only thing I would write.
Well, that said, do you switch between different types of books?
Since I read a lot of different books in order to write the writing craft books that I'm continuing to write, I can get very excited. I can read a Louise Penny mystery and just wallow in her poetic word weaving. I can read young adult and really enjoy the nuances that that particular genre have to offer. I can read a literary book and am, unfortunately, many times I'm glad that I am not writing that because I might have to commit suicide, because so many of them, it's not about the character overcoming and achieving something. It is about the character going deeper and deeper and deeper into their psychosis or their interior life or their issue, whatever the issue is, usually something very dark. Beautiful word crafting, beautiful stories, but not the kind of stories that I can or want to write. Um, Simply because when I write a story, I'm so deep into the characters that if they are feeling the kind of moroseness or the challenges that these particular types of stories offer their characters, they're too dark.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's quite true. Um, what is your writing schedule like? Do you have certain times of day that you write? How do you manage that?
When I started writing, I had 5 children under the age of 8.
Mm.
So thinking was a premium, much less writing time.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to borrow the neighbors' 4 children, and I would watch them during the course of the day. Because when I sent her 4 children home, then I was just down to 5, and the volume was doable, and it was amazing. It was all about perspective. But over time, the process has changed, and I allow that to happen. I find first thing in the morning is the best time for me to write. And I try to get up the first thing grab a cup of coffee, don't talk to anybody, definitely don't open the computer to check emails, and write for at least one uninterrupted hour. Then I come up for air, usually share a cup of coffee with my husband, and then go back for another uninterrupted hour. It gives me 2 hours of concentrated work time. Doing that with the Invisible Allies books, 2 hours a day, I was able to finish that book in 2 weeks
Mm.
because that's what I focused on. That was all. The challenge that I and many authors, published authors, do find is that there's so many other demands on us. Social media demands, giving a workshop here, arranging travel there, sending out gifts here, blogging over there, that if you don't create that kind of time or a routine that holds the world at bay long enough for you to get into your story, then the stories don't get written.
Well, I know you're very active on the social media channels, especially in your ninja group. How much time a day do you spend on social media?
The ninja group that you're talking about is my street team. And a street team for an author are those fans and supporters who have identified themselves as being willing to, when a new book is coming out or a new opportunity is coming up for the author, to be there to support her or him. So in the hierarchy of things, currently I have 4 Facebook pages. I have my Street Team Ninjas, because they feel like ninjas, because they come in and they're self working on my behalf, and I really appreciate them. They get most of my attention. It's a smaller group. It's a couple, less than 200 at this point, and it's manageable interacting a lot more with them. Then I go to my regular page, but there's several thousand on that page. And then the fan page, which is something that Facebook has created to treat being an author like a business, which is good. However, to reach your actual fans on a fan page, you have to pay.
You're not going to do it these days. It's just
No.
not going to happen.
But if your regular page reaches 5,000 individuals, you have to find a way to get around that, and the only way is to fan page.
Right.
Then I also act as Micah Cada. So I like to pop in at least once or twice a day on each of those for a few minutes. The challenge with Facebook or other social media is it's social. It's like thinking you're going to go to a party and only stay. I'm just going to say hi to a few friends and I'll be running on my way and get back to my day job. And the reality is pretty soon it's 30 minutes, or an hour, or particularly with direct messages, which means people can access you with their needs at a time that you were not necessarily planning to fix those needs. And that could happen anywhere from, the request can be anywhere from, hubba hubba beautiful, you want to come to my sex lair?
I was going to ask you if you've been getting many of those. Those are horrible.
I think any woman on Facebook gets those. But also I get requests from readers in, for example, in Africa, who happen to be near where the Ebola outbreak is. And they want to live in Africa. And someone from the Middle East that had wanted some assistance in understanding how to get a book published in America. Or someone who just is trying to find a book or trying to find where I'm going to be next. Or they're all legitimate to them requests, but it's time consuming.
Oh, right. Yeah, that can really be a problem. Do you ever use a timer when you're working on social media?
No, because inevitably the timer goes off when I'm in the middle of something. It's all. It is a catch-22 because you really do want to spend time with your readers. They deserve it. I mean, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be doing what I love to do. So it's like telling your children, sorry, I only have so much time for you, and your time today is limited. So it's a constant quandary. Putting a timer to me treats them, even though they can't hear the timer, but it treats them like they're a commodity that can be turned on and off. And I know I wouldn't want to be treated like that. So
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. That's a very good point.
is this where I should turn off my timer right now?
Right. Well, when you're doing your series, and I know you've got several more planned besides this one, how do you keep things straight within the series?
It is a challenge because when you write a series, you have to, depending on the length of the series, you have to be constantly thinking about what is happening in this book that is going to play out in this next book that will impact the third book and the fourth and the fifth and down the line. So you have to be thinking of the overarching of the series as well as each individual book. And as you're writing along, all of a sudden something will pop up in a book, and it's like, whoa, I didn't know that. Finally you reveal it. Now I know what's going on. And some things are like, well, crap, 3 books ago this was mentioned. I can't just leave it there. And as from a reader's point of view, just like when we watch TV and there's a term for it where you binge watch and you're watching the whole series
Right.
1 day or 2 days or whatever. A lot of people read a series that way.
Mm-hmm.
They'll start with book 1 and they'll read through to the end. To them, the minute something happens in book 3 or 5 or 10 that is at odds with what you just read in book 1, it pulls you out of the story.
Right.
And so I create a Bible for the book that tells me which character did what or what they said about something, and just pulling apart a book that in much detail to help me reference back. And then I trust my beta readers too, because so many of them have read the series, and they are the ones that can say, Mary, did you realize that you changed the sex of this character? Oh yeah, I meant that.
You didn't tell us about this trip to Switzerland, right?
It was in a novella I haven't written yet.
Do you find it hard to work the novellas into the arc of the main novels?
Not really, because the novellas tend to explore a particular smaller issue. It's not necessarily big world life threatening. It is not, the whole team doesn't have to be involved with the issue. Invisible Prison, the first novella, which is free now, is the one that introduces Alex and the team from Alex's point of view. And it introduces the fact that she's not comfortable with her gift being a witch. Invisible Duty, the second novella, deals with going after a jinn in Africa. And a jinn is another word of saying a genie.
Mm-hmm.
This one is particularly dangerous. And Alex has to trust one of the other recruits, Mandy, that she's not necessarily good friends with. Mm-hmm. And so it's about, she will do her duty even if it means that she has to trust somebody that she is not comfortable trusting. So that forces her to grow as a character. So the novellas tend to explore smaller issues. There's going to be one coming up with Alex and probably Kelly will have to hunt down a serial killer. It's a serial killer of pixies.
Huh?
Because they're pixies, not everybody takes them seriously. So it's like they have to go to bat for a preternatural character that doesn't necessarily, our image of pixies is pretty nice and lots of sparkles and fun things, but that's not necessarily all that there is to a pixie. So it can explore smaller stories.
Huh. So does that actually sort of give your brain, I don't want to say a break, but
There is no break.
so uh, getting out of the novel mindset, and where you can actually have a less complex story.
It is fun because what I think is that many writers, if you write novels, you have a tendency to go to a natural, feels comfortable length of a story. Most writers do. Some write short. They feel very comfortable writing short nonfiction or short fiction, short stories, poetry. Some feel only comfortable if they're writing long, but they can't write short because they feel like they're lopping off arms and legs and plot lines and that type of thing. So it forces me to go outside of where I'm normally comfortable, which is book length fiction, and hone skills for short fiction, which has the same requirements, only in a shorter format. You really have to, it's like being a copywriter. Every word has to count. When you only have 30,000 words to use instead of your normally 90,000 words, you can't write fluff. You can't write filler. You can't write description for the sake of description. So it challenges you. And then when you go back to the 90,000 word story, you're much more aware of what you're doing with each scene, each chapter, each part of the story.
Well, how do you fit? You are such a marvelous teacher of writing techniques. How do you fit that in with your normal fiction books?
Between midnight and 2 a.m. Actually, shifting gears again to write nonfiction is something that we're being told now that there's no such thing as right brain, left brain. But
Oh, really? I hadn't heard that.
that's what the scientists tell, but we don't believe them anyway.
No.
Because as writers, we know that,
Hmm.
again, we go to our natural. If it's natural for you to tell stories, it's probably not as comfortable telling nonfiction, giving the facts, giving it clarity, being able to explain what you can do to someone else who finds it a challenge to do that. But I think that the more that you have a chance to do that, the stronger your own writing can become. So I did not know that I was a good teacher until I started teaching.
With 5 kids, you wouldn't figure it out.
So to me, it really makes you, I have a strong analytical brain, and that makes me really study, how does this author do that? Why does this author's dialogue or body language or setting or use of hooks make such a difference in the story? Where that author is still might hit the New York Times, but they're not very good at those particular craft techniques. So I'm finding it always fascinating, and it always keeps me challenged and learning myself. And to pull that together to help other writers is a wonderful gift. I'm doing it now via books, whereas before I used to do it a lot more in person and traveling across the country to talk to people directly and teach all-day workshops.
Mm-hmm. Now, I've been to some of those, and they are fantastic.
Thank you.
Does the nonfiction element that you're working on ever inhibit your fiction? Like if you're working on settings, and are you more aware of the settings in the fiction that you're writing at the same time? And does it help it or does it hurt it?
I think it helps it. In the first draft, I don't think about it. I really don't. I have to be in the character's point of view.
Mm-hmm.
The revision process, makes me aware of this is where I can really fine tune. Is this too much setting? Is this not enough? Did I get the sensory details involved that makes it more real? Um, so each of these books, the upcoming book is going to be about hooks. There's going to be 2 books about hooks. My goal is to make everybody a hooker. I'm really excited about that goal. But what it does is it makes me aware again of other writing. And one of the first things that a lot of authors, the more they get into their own writing, is the less they read.
Mm-hmm.
And they find that if you get to read it, it's a busman's holiday. It is no longer the escapism that it used to be. So they're very selective about what they read, and they tend to choose their comfort read as opposed to opening themselves to a lot of different reading. And so writing in the nonfiction and studying how authors, I might have a theory, but then I have to see if that theory is applicable for all types of writing or only specific types of writing. And so that forces me to read a broad spectrum of books, and I'm really happy because of that.
Well, we are too, because I know as your readers, I'm one of your biggest reader fans as well as
I'll pay you later.
your writing thing. Yeah. But we appreciate the work that you do put in and the broad breadth you bring to your work. So, yeah, oh yeah, write faster, write faster.
That's when the IRS is always asking, how can you possibly be buying that many books? And my husband just looks at him and says, come on over.
You're
Look
right.
At the studio, look at our bedroom, look at any room in the house.
Absolutely, absolutely, yes. I think that's really true of all writers, and I know especially your fiction fans are quite voracious readers, and that's just comes with the territory. I think I asked in my group the other day, how many unread books do people have on their electronic devices, and I think I still hold the record, but
I'm seeing it more and more though, particularly when books are offered for free or 99 cents.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
People grab them, and then pretty soon they look and they've got several hundred, several thousand,
Well, my people I think are reading them. They really seem to be, and I think that is fantastic. You said that you're starting a new series of your writing craft books, and that is your hookers. Was that it?
It's called Writing Active Hooks, and there's going to be book 1 is about 5 of the most common, most universal hooks that if writers understood those hooks and understand where to apply them, they would have stronger success in engaging the reader and moving them deeper into a story.
Mm.
So that particular book will be coming out maybe next, what month are we in? August?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, maybe this month.
Oh.
August through September it will be coming out. And it is, again, as writers, we're often taught use hooks, but we're not taught what is meant by that term.
Mm-hmm.
And what kind of hooks are there? And how do you know if a hook is working or not? So the first book will deal with the 5 most universal types of hooks. The second book, which will be out in this year, will deal with the next 3 most common types of hooks that authors across, regardless of what kind of book you're writing, can employ. And then we'll look into a lot more detail about how to apply those hooks in key locations in your story. That if you are missing hooks, you are letting the reader down or giving them an excuse to set the book down.
Mm-hmm. Bob's asking a question about your when you talked about writing Invisible Allies, which was the novella. and I'm not sure he picked that part up. Uh, he heard you say you write 1 hour a day and finish that book in 2 weeks, and is asking, did that include the research?
Thanks for asking, Bob. First of all, really appreciate you being here. That book was actually, that ended up being 2 hours a day because I do 1 hour of writing, take a break, and then come back and do a second hour of writing. And Invisible Allies, it was set in Maryland, just outside of Washington, D.C., and mostly in a little town in central Missouri that I was a keynote speaker at a conference in St. Louis this spring. And while I was there, I rented a car and I went out to this little town because my husband's family had settled there in the early 1800s. And I love this town. This town was just so perfect, and it just needed some preternaturals. So the town setting and was because I was there. So other than those two pieces of research and to find out what had been written about witch finders in other stories, there wasn't a lot of research that needed to be done in that book. So yes, that 2 hours a day took in research, took in everything that I needed to do to get those books to a ready for the beta readers to start reading them. Good question.
Huh, that was, I'm a very slow writer, and so I'm particularly impressed by not taking forever. Yeah, that's why your book count is far greater than mine. Um, with the Invisible Recruit series, you said you had some more coming out soon. Can you tell us a little bit about the publishing schedule upcoming for that?
The next full-length novel will be Invisible Secrets, and that will be Kelly McAllister's story. My stories, the title always includes the premise of the story, what it's based on. So Allies was about two women who were friends and readjusting. They are allies, but having to come to grips with a change in their friendship. Invisible Secrets is about Kelly discovering a secret about herself that she doesn't necessarily want to find out. The one after that, it will either be a novella from Alex's point of view or a full-length novel from Alex. And then the next book after that will be Invisible Embrace, and that will be Kelly's book again.
Oh.
She and Van, her love interest, have to come to grips with the fact he is a preternatural. He is a shifter. He's a wolf shifter. And his first love broke his heart because she could not accept that he was not human. And so he guarded his heart since then. And Kelly might be the one who breaks through to him.
I'll look forward to that one. I could see that coming a little bit. Wondered how long that was going to be before it got fleshed out a little bit more.
I like to think of me that way.
But you also said that you have books coming out about the other characters in the other recruits, right?
Yes. Those will be next year. I'll probably do at least one Alex novel and probably one Kelly novel. Simply because by that time the readership has grown to expect stories about the two of them.
Sure.
But Jaylene is asking, well, she's not asking, she's demanding.
That sounds like her.
Yeah. Jaylene is not a sit in the corner in your own box type of woman. And I will probably explore her stories in at least 2 books for her next year. And then who knows how many novellas and how many nonfiction work I'll bring out.
That gives us something to look forward to.
Yeah, my announcement that I'm in the loony bin. Please save me.
I'm checking over for questions. Let's see. Kimberly says, for someone who has never written a book and decides they want to, would they even understand what they are reading in your writing books?
Good question, Kimberly. Thanks for being here
I
and
love
asking.
that one.
Yeah, that is a good question. And it's hard for me to answer that because I know um, that I am gearing it towards writers who want to improve their craft. But what I'm hearing, and you can read it on some of the reviews on Amazon for the Writing Active series, is that people have read it who are not writers yet or just want to explore whether they could be writers. And one of the things that they enjoy most about the series and my approach towards teaching writing is that it makes it accessible to everybody. You don't have to be a published author. You don't even have to be an author who's written a book or two to understand and to see the possibilities. And in fact, I'm always impressed when newer writers or people who want to write a story take the time to understand the elements of the craft before they jump in. So reading about that, reading about hooks, reading about setting, reading about body language, which will be one of the upcoming books, reading about dialogue, all those things prepare you. It can be a little bit overwhelming. So my advice is read the books, then close them, put them aside, and sit down and just tell the story you want to tell. And then in the revision process, go back because it's only after you write a book do you really discover what it is that you personally need to learn as a writer. Because I write fast, and I used to write a whole lot faster, I would write a book and find out, oh, okay, the editor says I need to understand more about point of view or about internal conflict or about whatever it was that they thought that areas for growth. So then I would focus in on that one particular area and just learn that. But I would write a whole book to figure it out, to see if I understood the concepts. So the good news is that yes, the books are accessible even if you've never written anything. But they are geared towards getting you to write. So for the people who've reviewed them who are not writers yet on Amazon, they actually get them excited about getting to write.
Yes, I'll talk a little bit about that too because I think Mary's books are great for beginning writers. Um, they also help you as a beginning writer. A lot of the times you're reading books and trying to figure out what you like about them, what you don't, rather than, I like this, I don't like this, but actually studying why so you can put that into your own work. And Mary sort of gives you an insight into what makes good writing. So you can recognize the techniques that the author's using that either you think is good and you want to keep it in, or that you don't care for and so you want to take out. And so actually, for me, one of the greatest aids to writing is if I'm reading a book that's not so well written, and when I start rewriting it and editing it, I think this is stupid. Put it down, go write your own, and you find something else to read. So, for a beginning writer, I think her books are absolutely excellent, and I would say pick one up and see how it comes to you. If you, I'm trying to think whether there's uh, most of the terms are defined. I know writers sort of have their own jargon that can throw beginners off. POV is a real popular one that comes to mind, which is strictly point of view, and it means which character's head are you in at the moment. But there are so many groups now that you can get those questions answered. If you pop into Mary's Ninja group and say, well, I don't quite understand this, what does it mean? I'm sure that she will let you know, or one of the others of us will definitely let you know. Does that answer your question?
I think you did a very nice job with that. One of the things that I do want to share is that because I'm independently published, I get a price of the books. And one of the things I keep trying to make sure is that the books are affordable. I try to keep them less than a Starbucks drink, which, given the cost of some of those drinks,
You have a lot of room now.
Really, I'm going to go out and jack them
Yeah.
up. But I break them into smaller increments, the book sizes. And the focus on them is to get you writing right now, not to just talk about theory, not to think about, in the past when I was learning, so many books were these very thick tomes, and you worked on them and you read them and you read them, and then you thought you were applying the concepts, but they weren't broken down to the line by line, sentence by sentence, word by word. This is why it's working here. Not because I like it, but because the author chose this word, not that word, because they placed a particular phrase at the beginning or the end, not in the middle. All these type of things. So the books really are geared towards making it accessible, making it simple, which doesn't always mean easy, but making it so that authors can immediately be excited about what they're doing or want to do and run with it.
And I think you've done that quite well. I'm looking for more questions. Kimberly says, thank you. The answers were helpful, so that helps. Good to know that. I don't know, like I said, Google is acting very weird. I said that to somebody on the event page. All of the comments are posting twice. I have no idea why. It's nothing you're doing. That's just the way things happen sometimes. So
Better and carries on this end. So that's
yeah,
probably
we'll blame it on Mary's weirdness.
Yeah.
Well, if you are interested in writing, I'm really excited about this project that Mary has put together. Um, it's going to benefit anybody who participates, but there's going to be 7 people that are absolutely going to get hands-on attention from Mary. And that is going to have to do with the hooks. And we're talking about her upcoming book is on hooks, and so she is putting on a hook workshop. And are we going to get shut down by Homeland Security or something?
Not really. It's part of secret.
Training hookers or something. I don't know. But what we're going to do is we're going to hold a hangout just like we are today, and we will have any number of people watching, and the watchers can ask questions on the event page just exactly like you're doing today. But there will be 7 very fortunate authors who can submit their first page and have Mary go over it. And you will be included in the little pictures at the bottom along with us, and get your critique live and in the broadcast. And I can't tell you how invaluable that is. I have had Mary do some of mine, and some of them I've had to start over with. But
And Lynn is still crying, and there was therapy. Again,
right.
as writers, we write to the best of our abilities, but it's only when someone else can actually say, hey, this is where the hook is in your opening page. You buried it in the 3rd line or halfway down the page. Or as writers, many of us have to start a story in the wrong place.
All of us
Because
start the story in the wrong place.
right. We need to know information about the character. So we start the story where we need to know. This is why editors and agents often request from us 3 chapters or 50 pages or whatever it is. They know we start in the wrong place. They know that if it doesn't hook them on the first page, they'll go to the second chapter. They won't bother reading between first page and second chapter. They go right to the second chapter, right to the third chapter. If they're still not engaged, which is what a hook will do, then they don't bother with it because there's too many other writers out there submitting to them that at least gets a hook someplace in those pages. And so what the course is about is 7 people, we will analyze their work, their first page, why it works, where they can strengthen it. And then anyone else who's sitting in on the class can ask as many questions as they want during the course. Plus, there will be a description of hooks. We'll go over the 5 most common hooks. We'll talk about where those hooks are going to be used. That comes out in the second book, but you'll get it here first. I feel like one of those infomercials at night. So there's something to learn about them and to ask questions, to have a chance to say, hey, my understanding humor was a hook. Can you speak to that? My understanding was the story concept is a hook. Isn't that enough? Or my character is unique on page 58. Only if you're writing the girl with the dragon tattoo. There's all sorts of fun things that you get to learn in the class, and you can, the 7 positions, once they're filled, then we'll only have openings for sitting in on the class but not getting your review. First 7 people that do sign up for to get their review will be the ones who get it. And we're talking about it today, so you have a chance to get for it today. I will talk to my street team about it and give them first shot, and then I'll make it open to the general writing public.
I think this is going to be marvelous. I know what a great help it is for every level of writer. It's wonderful to start off with beginners with such great information, but even people who have been writing for a long time can gain a lot from that. If you're interested in this, I will put the link in. The link may be showing up depending on how Google's feeling today along the side of the video. However, I will put it in the chat box over here, and you can click on it. It's also in the description, I think. It's authors tools, if I can spell it right, .com/Mary. And Mary starts with a capital letter. Just because I figured she'd fuss at me if I made it lowercase.
I'm just happy you got it right.
I'll see if we have any more questions. Oh, and that workshop's going to be on Saturday, September the 6th, at 3 o'clock Pacific, 6 o'clock Eastern. And it will be recorded as well. So whether you're a participant or whether you're a viewer, you'll be able to watch it in replay as well as being live. And if you can't make it live, you'll still get the replay. And if you can't make it live and you're a participant, then we'll work something out. We'll probably have a hangout just with you in it and splice it into the replay later. I'll do that, Mary. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Something we want to make clear is that this is not to make anyone uncomfortable. So if you want your first page analyzed, but you don't want it to be used as a teaching tool for the whole group, just let me know. I'll still analyze it. I'll talk to you directly. Those who are willing, though, to let it be a teaching tool for the group get an opportunity to actually get feedback from the people who are just in the course listening and giving feedback. So at some point, as a writer, you have to put your work out there. and this is kind of a safe environment for it. I haven't sent anybody away in tears yet, except for Lynn.
No. Even though you looked at my page and you said you have no hooks.
Was I being subtle there?
Well, no, you know. But by the time we got there, I knew that I didn't have it. Well, there was one. Well, maybe this is a hook, you know. And you said no. Oh, okay, I can see that. But I didn't know what I needed to do. I knew how to make it better, and it
Exactly.
wasn't.
No, it wasn't hard. Once
No,
you
no,
knew what was
and it wasn't
missing.
painful, you know.
And that's the biggest challenge for writers is we write in such vacuums. You know,
Hmm.
we're writing, we're thinking, oh, this is so cool. And then comes the doubt. And the doubt says, oh, this is the biggest pile of dog do I have ever read. And until we get feedback from either directly from readers, from our critique groups, never ask your beloved spouse because their first role is to support you, and saying that's dog do doesn't always do that. So then they are in the dog house. But we need this kind of feedback. We need honest evaluation of where does this stand. We're in a very competitive marketplace. Yes, you can go straight from writing your draft to getting it published, but that doesn't mean that the readers will appreciate it if you haven't done due diligence and worked on the craft. And I'm seeing that more and more, that people are skipping the craft and trying to go towards, because I said and told the story, they will come. Well, they won't.
Right.
And I don't hold that back, but I don't give feedback to me, feedback, if it's not going to help you grow as a writer, it's not good feedback.
Yeah. And Tina says she's in. She is registered. So
Yay, Tina!
congratulations. We look forward to working with you, Tina.
You have to send me, though, some sunshine from Florida. That's a prerequisite. If you're from Florida, you have to send the sunshine.
Now you've got sunshine today, right?
Off and on.
And the class will be private. It will be only those attendees and Mary and I. So this particular hangout's wide open. Anybody on the internet can watch it and comment and drop by. That is absolutely not the case with the class. It will be a private, very loving atmosphere. What do you
Am I
expect?
invited
Two
then?
two romance writers.
To writers, period, because it's
Right.
not geared just towards romance.
No, it's not at all.
Yeah, and that's a nice thing too, is that oftentimes with a lot of the special interest groups, you have to be writing with that group
Hmm.
expects you to be writing. So when you write outside of that, sometimes you will hear information from speakers and workshops that is specific to that genre. And without realizing it, the instructors are giving you information that does not apply to what it is you are writing. So that becomes one of those things that as a writer you really have to know what you're writing, who you're writing it for, and is the information that's being given to you applicable for what you're writing, or are there nuances that you need to understand? And we'll adjust.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you're not targeting this toward nonfiction, are you, Mary, or are you?
No,
Okay.
because it is about fiction, but it can be
Hmm.
for memoir. So it could be any type of fiction writing, short story, novels, um, and memoir are probably the areas that it really has to make a difference.
Right. The information helps nonfiction, but a lot of it isn't really applicable to nonfiction. So, but well, with me, I switch things around anyway. Latina says she's having rainstorms, so she'll try to send the sunshine between rainstorms.
Oh, so worse to send you the sunshine.
Right. I'm looking for more questions. I think I got them all. If I didn't, please post again so I can run by and catch them. Mary, I really appreciate you being here today and sharing with us. I think.
That's what I was just going to say about the people who are listening, and you're taking the time, Lynn, and putting this together, because it gives me as a writer a different way to connect to my readers, to my potential readers, and to talk writing. Again, as writers, we get very isolated and locked into the worlds that we're creating and the deadlines that we have. And so it's a fun way to explore getting out of that. And if Lynn can get a techno peasant like myself working on Google Hangouts, that means anybody can do this. I'm saying this as the tech gods are probably going to strike that lightning right here on this computer.
I think they're punishing you for missing your lower third. But and that is one of the benefits of the class. If you participate, you get to learn all about Hangouts.
Amen. That's why I'm calling.
I'm going out proselytizing about Hangouts, building fans.
And for those who are listening, if you do have a question and want to address me directly, you can do so direct message on Facebook. You can do so at mary@marybuckham.com. Or you can, if you're a member of my street team, the Ninjas, the Mary B Ninjas, feel free to ask there, because if you have a question, that probably means that other people have a question about writing, about the Invisible Recruit series, about life in general. And if I don't know the answer, I'm really good about saying I have no clue.
And I will keep an eye on the event page, because that's where the replay is going to be. You can go back and watch that any time. And leave a question there, and I will get it over to Mary, and we'll get back to you on it. I'll check one more time. Bob's in. Great.
Oh, fun, Bob. Looking forward to that.
Yes. This is going to be a real fun group, and we will have a hangout either as a group or individually prior to the class so that everybody sort of gets used to the technology.
I'm in.
Are you saying you need all the practice you can get?
Oh, absolutely. And then some. Oh.
Last chance for questions. Anybody have any more?
So, Lynn, I have a question.
Okay.
For example, for like Bob or Tina or someone else here in the group who may have a friend, how they go to that
same URL, authorstools.com/Mary.
And so they can sign up and get the special rate. Oh, and
right.
By the way, that rate is going to be $20 less than what this workshop will be down the road.
So, yeah.
That's another.
As a first group, you get to test it out, and you get the introductory price. So it will go up, but we will leave that price up for how long, Mary?
Well, until it's full, or it will be for this first group. So after September 6th, if we offer this workshop again, which I hope to do with both the first 5 hooks that we'll be talking about, but also the next set of hooks. So the first class that we offer, we will do so on this type of a venue where there will be a trial run class, and you'll get the one-on-one help on your pages, or you get to sit in and listen to it. And that will be at the introductory price. And then the price does go up and move forward. And so if you do enjoy the class, then you can also let myself or Lynn know, or if you have problems with the class, if it didn't work for you, there's something that we could do different, you can let us know, so that we can make it work for other writers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really, of course, I love technology, so I like this method of doing it because you don't have to travel. Used to have to catch Mary wherever she was all over the country, and she would hop all over the country, um, and sometimes that meant you know either driving or flying and getting a hotel and all that. So.
Well, one year, I literally from the second week of August until the last week of November, I was every weekend somewhere, usually on the East Coast or in Canada or someplace. And my husband finally, to meet me, I had a week between a conference in Connecticut and one in Maine. And rather than fly home, because that took as much time to fly home and then fly back out the next week, my husband just flew out and met me in Connecticut. And we drove around all the northeastern states until we drove up to the main conference. But it gets really, really sad when you have to go across the country in order to see each other live in between.
You should have signed up for one of your workshops.
I don't trust him to behave.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for being here today, and especially Mary, thank you for sharing with us a little bit about your process and giving us a glimpse at what we can look forward to as far as your books go. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you. And goodbye. I appreciate the people who came today. Love you all.
Yes, so it's nice to have you, and we look forward to doing more of these, okay?
Great. Thank you.
Have a good evening, everybody.
Bye-bye.